The Department of Homeland Security is looking to increase its monitoring of Facebook and Twitter.
Something like Palantir is the key to stopping major terrorist attacks.
These are profile-based, automated, pre-crime, suspicion-generating mechanisms.
Pre-conks see the future, and they're never wrong.
I would compare artificial intelligence and machine learning to the advent of electricity.
It looks to us like a black box.
The intelligence community is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can, by any means possible.
You're just told, sorry, you can't go there. You can't do that.
We all leave digital trails behind us as we journey through the world. And rapid advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning technology have allowed corporations and governments to build ever more precise tools to analyze that data, discover patterns, and even predict behavior.
I think one of the things that we're in the process of grappling with as a society is, what does this technology mean? What does it do? I would compare artificial intelligence and machine learning to the advent of electricity. So imagine that you just heard about this magical thing called electricity, but there are bad things you can do with electricity. You can put people in an electric chair and use it for capital punishment. Those are things that we're going to have to work through with this technology. Is what are those concerns?
Some privacy experts, however, worry that handing this powerful technology over to opaque government agencies is laying the groundwork for a total police state.
The Berlin Wall wasn't actually built in a day, it was built quickly. But the checkpoints already existed. It's just that people were accustomed to passing from the American zone to the Soviet zone to the French zone. And what changed on the day was that all of a sudden the turnstile didn't lift. You weren't allowed through the checkpoint. Then the wall was built in. But in building the checkpoints, in building the control mechanisms, we're already putting in place the infrastructure for those who will abuse them in the future.
Some Silicon Valley companies have been building artificially intelligent surveillance tools for the deep state that help government agents make sense of massive amounts of information scattered across several databases and to discover patterns that might otherwise be hidden. They're called threat intelligence firms, and one of the biggest in the business is named Palantir.
One of the ways that people use the term threat intelligence is in terms of open source intelligence, gathering information about national security or other threats just by essentially reading the news, reading Twitter. Companies like Palantir can run artificial intelligences that can read a lot more of Twitter than any one person or even a team of people could possibly think of doing.
Palantir received an early $2 million investment from In-Q-Tel, the venture capital arm of the CIA. But Palantir's biggest early funder was PayPal founder, Facebook board member, and Trump supporter Peter Thiel, who invested $30 million in the company, which now has a $20 billion valuation.
Something like Palantir is the key to stopping major terrorist attacks. I don't think we're going to do it by projecting military force throughout the world. We will do it by uncovering these conspiracies before they come together.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
Journalist Mark Bowden reported in 2012 that the hunt for bin Laden drew on an unfathomably rich database. And after the government failed to parse the data on its own, Palantir developed a product that actually deserves the popular designation killer app. And Thiel, an outspoken libertarian, told Fortune magazine he hopes his technology will actually help protect the civil liberties of Americans. Because given the massive amounts of Americans' data the government takes in, if we could help them make sense of data, they could end indiscriminate surveillance.
We're not creating a technology that's this black box algorithmic engine that you just throw data into it and it spits out an answer to you.
But privacy experts worry that the secrecy around some of Palantir's contracts with the Department of Homeland Security are eroding civil liberties.
Palantir's tools, in their sophistication and complexity and their algorithmic rule sets, enable the transition from this watching role to a proactive, predictive policing role. They are the supposed precogs.
Precogs see the future, and they're never wrong.
But it's not the future if you stop it. Isn't that a fundamental paradox?
The movie Minority Report famously portrayed a society where police harnessed the power of psychic precogs to arrest people for crimes before they are ever actually committed. A 2012 Department of Homeland Security report boasts that Palantir's tech can be used to predict future activities.
So in moving down that path of pre-crime profiling, we're accepting that it is legitimate to impose consequences based on robotic precogs conclusions about what you're likely to do in the future.
So we say artificial intelligence, and we think about Skynet and HAL from 2001. A lot of times the actual technical reality is much more mundane and less exciting. We may be looking at things that are, for the AI, simply understanding what humans may intuitively get. If you drop a pen on the floor, you're likely to bend over and pick it up, right? Or types of predictions that might be in the aggregate, right? So for an aggregate population that undertakes certain behaviors, some percentage of them are likely to do X, Y, or Z.
The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting.
When the Trump administration talks about extreme vetting, the Palantir's tools and the decisions based on them are what they're talking about.
Palantir landed a major government contract in 2014 when the Obama administration approved a $41.6 million deal with Immigration and Customs Enforcement to set up an algorithmic profiling system.
How many government contracts do you currently hold today?
Most of our contracts have massive clauses in them saying we can't disclose.
The full extent of Palantir's federal contracts remains unknown, but under the Trump administration, the company has created a profiling system for Border Patrol, and a former Palantir lobbyist serves in the Pentagon as Deputy Chief of Staff to Defense Secretary James Mattis. Representatives from Palantir declined to participate in this video, but the company website assures visitors that there is oversight from Palantir's Council on Privacy and Civil Liberties.
Palantir is as opaque today as they were when they were founded. When other organizations have filed FOIA requests seeking information about it, they're almost uniformly denied. It looks to us like a black box, and without being inside Palantir, it's hard to say exactly how it works.
The Department of Homeland Security has only released highly redacted materials about these systems, arguing in court that the algorithms must stay secret in order to remain effective.
One of the challenges in a lot of intelligence work is that oftentimes the nature of the work is that if you explain publicly exactly what you're doing and how you're collecting information on whether it's a terrorist or another government, you spoil that source of information.
When the government is telling judges whose role is to review and approve these things, trust us, but don't actually look at what we're doing, don't look behind the curtain, that should be a red flag that something wrong is going on behind the curtain and that we need to look more closely at it.
Enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country.
What we've seen since 9/11 is the emergence of a homeland security industrial complex that now rivals in its lobbying power and its influence in Washington, the military-industrial complex. But I think the existence of a homeland security industrial complex as a force in Washington, regardless of which party is in power, has been largely unrecognized.
Because of the secrecy around the technology, it's hard to know to what degree the federal government has deployed it not only against immigrants and refugees, but against American citizens. We do know post 9/11 that information sharing between foreign intelligence agencies and domestic law enforcement has become routine.
Once these tools are built, the mission creep is extremely rapid. Once the NSA built a tool to try and find terrorists' phone calls, it was almost immediately used by DEA to find street-level drug criminals. If ICE builds a tool using Palantir technology, we can be certain that that tool will be used to whatever a government customer wants to do.
The real question is, what do we do with the technology, right? Who's using it, for what purposes, and under what kinds of safeguards? Particularly when we're talking with the government, what are the checks and balances in place? But there's no technology that is just inherently good or inherently bad. It's about how we're using it and to what ends.
I don't think it's inevitable that the government is going to adopt this kind of technology any more than it's inevitable that we're going to have a regime where you have to show your papers everywhere you go, or where there are virtual checkpoints everywhere in your facial image and its template is a virtual key that's vetted every time you walk down the street. The situation is bad. It's going to take significant change and significant popular resistance and pushback.